Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining. I've got Romaric, whose name I probably butchered, but I'm trying, here with me today. But before I let him start, I'm going to do a little bit of intro. First of all, I want to give some thanks to our sponsors. So just for those of you who are new, this is something I do basically for the developer community. I mean, but it takes a bunch of money to keep going. So without the sponsors like Covery, we wouldn't be able to keep this. I wouldn't be able to keep this going. So I really appreciate them. So we've got Stratic. If you're interested in, if you do WordPress and you want to convert that WordPress application into a Jamstack application, all kind of built in, Stratic is the platform for you. So give it a try. You can get a free trial, try and convert your WordPress site with dynamic things built in. It's really cool. And then I won't talk too much about Covery today because I will let Romaric do some of that himself. But thank you to Covery for being a sponsor. Launch Darkly, who I work for, but if you're interested in feature management and feature flags, Launch Darkly is a really, really awesome platform. Netlify, who CFE.dev runs on Netlify. I've used Netlify since like the very, very early days. I did like one of their things, and I think one of my old account was maybe like a customer number like few hundred, and they're in the millions now. So yeah, I've been using it for a while. Love Netlify. Definitely recommend them for, if you're doing Jamstack sites and stuff like that. So I have one upcoming event. I do have others that are planned on being announced, but they're not yet announced. And the one upcoming event is my favorite of the year, the jam.dev. So this is my Jamstack focused event that will be coming in January. It says January 28th and 29th. It's actually 26th and 27th. I'm using the wrong graphic here. Great. 26th and 27th. This is a lot of fun. I've already announced a bunch of speakers for this, and more are to come. If you go to thejam.dev, you will see all the speakers that have been announced, and you can get tickets. And if you use that code CFE at checkout, the tickets are right now going to be 50% off, making them super, super cheap. 2 days of Jamstack goodness. I hope you come. This is the second year. Last year was a lot of fun for those of you who came. So I'd love to hear feedback about this event, about CFE.dev in general. So just email me at brian@cfe.dev, or if you'd like to speak, I'd love to have new speakers. So I'm always looking for new speakers. Reach out to me and tell me what you'd like to come speak on. Yes, this session is recorded. This is the question I get from pretty much everybody. Yes, it's recorded. You can come back immediately after the presentation to the same URL you're at right now and watch it. Watch the recording, and then in about a week or so, I will post an edited recording that takes out all my silly intro here that you probably don't want to rewatch, and then that'll be posted as well. And speaking of all those recordings, we have, I think this number is outdated now. It's like 140 plus sessions that are all free, all pre-recorded from the past 4.5 years of running this, posted up there. I also should be posting all the sessions over the break for the holidays from our more serverless event that happened a few months ago. So look, if you're interested in serverless stuff, there will be a ton of free sessions around that are coming. So keep an eye on that. CFE.dev, obviously, for that, and it's /sessions, I think. I should know. It's my own site. But so follow us at CFE_dev on Twitter or on Instagram. And that is it. That's my slides. Now I'm going to turn it over to Romaric to tell us about Covery and about how he's built this developer platform. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing this. Take it away.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. It's great, and thank you for doing all of that. It's just a great work. So, hello everyone. Happy to be here. So, just before getting into the thing, I'm gonna present myself. I'm Romaric, a CEO and co-founder of Covery, but I'm also a developer myself. I will still be a developer in my blood. I used to work in a different company in the financial industry, in the ad tech industry, working on different system infrastructures and also backend development. I'm super familiar with great languages like Kotlin, Rust, Python, Yes, I'm super happy to be here. And today, what I'm gonna just show to you and explain to you is what's Covery, how does it work behind the scene in terms of high level and also low level details. So if you are a developer, a CTO, a DevRel, anyone that is interested on infrastructure stuff, how the things works behind the scene, it's the great talk for you. I'm just also going to dig into a few details like Rust things because we're using Rust behind the scene. So yeah, this is the talk that you should listen to. So that's great. So just getting to the thing. So how many of you are deploying application on AWS? I think today it's like an unanswered questions because I know that most of especially our developers, our users, our customers are using a lot AWS. But the problem, and you know all of that, and we were discussing about that with Brian, is that there's like tons of platforms doing that. But the problem with AWS is that it used to be like super simple to use. It used to be maybe like 15 years ago. And now when you use AWS, it's super it can be like quite complex to deploy just in simple applications. And basically the idea of Qovery is to simplify the deployment application deployment on AWS. So basically we integrate the platform on the working environment. As a developer, you are using probably Git, like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. So the only things that you need to do is just first connect Qovery to your AWS account. And from that, selecting the repository and the dependency that you need to deploy, like the database, and Qovery takes care of everything from the infrastructure creation, the app deployment, the run, and the scale. That's exactly so. That's what we provide basically. And today we have more than 10,000 developers using the platform for more than 100 countries. So it's like a very common. There is no border for that. It's a very common problem that we are solving. So as I told you, we are building this platform that is running on the AWS account of our customers. So we manage from the build to the deploy to the scale of the application. That's basically what we're doing. So yeah, I have a small demo at the end of the presentation, but the goal here is not to just try to sell my platform. I want to dig into the details. And just to grab the details, we need to get into the high level view. So basically, how Covery works is super simple. So as a developer, you will connect to Covery, so console.covery.com. To connect to that console, so we need to provide an API, obviously. So basically what happens is when you get connected and you have linked your AWS account and also your repository, your applications, then Covery can start to work. So from any event that we receive from a GitHub or GitLab or even Bitbucket, we can react and start to deploy the application. So if you look at the schema from the left to the right, you will see that for a GitHub or GitLab event, the control plane, so what we call the control plane that is in charge of managing the authentications and also the signal to deploy the applications, we will send that information, so all the events, to what we call the Covery engine and also the Covery engine, and then deploy the applications. So it's, if you look at those parts, we have 3 parts. So the parts that are outside, so not managed by Covery, we have the Covery infrastructure that is running on our own cloud accounts. Behind the scene, we are using ourselves AWS. And you have the part that is running on the infrastructure of our customers. And that part is super interesting, and that's what we are going to look just before that, after that. So just to give you the responsibility of each pieces, so you have the control plane that is written in Kotlin, that is in charge of this business logic, scheduling, and sending information to what we call the Covery engine that you have on the right. So this part is quite interesting. You can see that there is like a URL. It's open source and written in Rust, and is in charge of abstracting the cloud provider, because I'm talking a lot about AWS, but in fact, our solution work also on DigitalOcean, Scaleway, and soon GCP and Azure. Oh, is it still working? Yes, that's great. Yes. So, and you have also another part, which is the Covery agent that is running on the side of our customer that is in charge of forwarding in real time the logs, application logs, and giving the status of the different applications that are running on their side. Because one thing that is super important in Covery is that it's like a remote control application. So we are not storing anything from our customers. Different pieces are running on their side. And to manage all of that, we have different interfaces. It's not only the web interfaces, but we also have the CLI. But this is what makes like super easy to use Covery. So that's basically what we are doing, the different parts. So if we get into the details of that, you will see that it's a bit more complex, but not so much if we detail that. So I told you that when we receive like a GitHub, so an application event in terms of deployment, so let's say that you're a developer, you are like doing any changes on your code, so you commit your code, you push your code, and then from that, Covery will hook your repository and start to deploy your application. So what happens behind the scenes is that we have our control plane that has installed, so linked, create a webhook into your repository, say, hey, you have to send all the events that you send to our control plane. So this is just one URL, so an API URL. And then from that, Covery will receive the event and say, hey, is it like an application that I'm managing? Okay, I've matched with some applications that are managed, because you can have multiple from one repository. You can have like multiple projects and multiple applications that are linked to that repository. So we have to match the applications. And then after that, we have what we call the deployment rule process. So it's basically when you're using Covery, you can choose if you want to deploy or not an application based on the specific rule. It can be like business rules, but you can say, hey, this is an environment, let's say that it's a feature that I've created a new branch, and this branch, maybe you don't want to create an environment, you don't want to deploy this application, or maybe you want to do it, but manually. And this is what we call the deployment rule. So we have to match the deployment rules. And when a rule is matched, then we'll choose like a Covery engine that will target to deploy the application. Because with Covery, you can manage from one single interface. You can start to manage different infrastructure on the same cloud provider, but also in different cloud provider. And this is where it starts to be like quite interesting. So when we have matched the Covery engine, then we'll send an information. So it's not exactly the way that it works, because we don't have like a direct connection to the Covery engine, but the Covery engine is connected to the control plane, and that pick the information, pull the information, and then start to deploy the application. This is exactly what happens just after that. So if we look at the details here, so this part, if I just go back a few seconds, so that part is running. So if you look, so the yellow square is running, so it's outside of the control of Covery, okay? And the Covery infrastructure is obviously the Covery infrastructure, so it's exactly what we provide and manage by Covery. But the part that is in charge of the deployment, so the Covery engine and all those things, is the part that is running on the infrastructure of our customers. And here, what happens is that we have different pieces. So if we break that part, we'll see that we have the AWS, we have the VPC, we have Kubernetes, and we have namespaces and all the applications that are running into that. And here, the Covery engine that is open source and written in Rust establish the connection with the control plane, and then start to pull information, deployment requests from the control plane. And this is where we manage and we deploy the application without establishing the connection with those Covery engine for different reasons. The main purpose is the security and different things. From that, when we receive the information to create and deploy the application, then we'll use the Kubernetes. So because we have two different type of application that we're managing, we see the stateless one and the stateful one. But if we talk about the stateless one, so all the application that does no state, like compute, like a simple application with no database, then we'll use Kubernetes to serve to deploy the application and host the application. So it's a EKS. We are not creating a Kubernetes. We are using our solution. We are using a Kubernetes that is provided by the cloud provider, because obviously we'll not do the same amount of work that they're doing. It's quite reliable and super scalable. And we are using the managed services as much as possible that are provided by the cloud provider. So what happens here is that we are just creating, let's say that you have your user that is deploying in the applications. So we'll match all the different rules. And when we send the information to the engine, then we'll start to create a namespace and deploy the application into that namespace. And this is where the Covery engine is also in charge of creating the different resources like the network, configuring the security and all those things, and then starting to deploy the application and make it run. So this is what happens behind the scene, but we are talking a lot about the stateless part, but we also have the stateful part. The stateful part is when you ask what happens, basically what happens when you want to have access to a PostgreSQL database, for instance. So there's two things that can happen. So you have the choice as a developer on Covery, you can choose between two options. So the container and the managed version. So the container, obviously, it's just a container of the service that you want that will spin up on your Kubernetes cluster. For instance, you can have like a PostgreSQL version that is running in the version of your choice, like a version 13, for instance, and in container mode. So what we do is that just creating a new pod with a container and then attach to this pod a block storage, okay, a block storage. So it will help just to make sure that even if your pod is restarting, that you get your data. But it's great for development, but obviously when you run in production, you want to have much more than just having the service that is running. You may want to have also the backup, the point-in-time recovery, the scalability, the security, all those things. And this is what we provide. Also, you have the mode, so the managed mode, where we'll not spin up a container, but we'll use directly the cloud version. So for instance, for AWS, if you want to PostgreSQL, it will be RDS. And then you get everything that's the best of the AWS services right after using Covery. So that's what we do behind the scene. So yeah, that's what happens. Maybe also one detail that you may have noticed is that we are talking like if the infrastructure, so the application was like ready to be run. But when you use for the first time Covery and you don't have access, so it's the first time that you're using AWS, you have your account, it's great, you have all your free credits, and you may want to deploy your application, but you have nothing. Nothing is ready. There is no EKS, no VPC, nothing, just the account. What does Covery is that with the Covery engine, you have two modes also. So it's open source, full open source, so you can take a look at that on GitHub. We are creating the infrastructure. So from the engine is in charge. So when you, for the first time, use Covery will take care of creating the infrastructure and all the dependency, configuring the network, all those things for you right away. And this is exactly what we look at in the details here. So it's inside the Covery engine. So inside the Covery engine, you can see like two different parts. You have the Covery engine, what we call Covery engine runtime, and you have the binaries. The Covery engine runtime includes like the runtime that is consuming a lib. The lib is open source and is in charge of just executing commands. So it could be like external commands or internal commands, but also executing API requests based by the cloud provider that you're using. So in here, AWS. And what's quite interesting into that model is that we have built the system. So it's a transactional engine that is in charge of if anything goes wrong during like the different steps, if anything goes wrong, then there is a system where the engine will roll back into like a previous working state. That's super, super important. It's in the case of the infrastructure creations, but also in the application deployment. So let's say that you have like anything that goes wrong. That's why it took like so much time for us to build that platform. It's because, in fact, even if cloud providers and AWS, even if it's super reliable, you can see that there's like we got like an outage yesterday. Even if it's super reliable, sometimes you have some problem. You can have like API problem at any time. And let's say that you have your customers that are using the platform and starting to deploy, and then you create like a load balancer. So the system is creating a load balancer, anything, and something goes wrong on the cloud provider side, then you have to be able just to roll back into like a previous working state, because otherwise you are completely you know what I mean. Okay, so yeah, that's what is starts to be like quite complex, and that's what we solve with this transactional model, because we can just revert to in previous working version. Yes. Here, a few other words. It's concerning the way, yes, it's also, it's a transactional model. So I really invite you to just take a look at the code of that, because it can be quite interesting. It's a state machine, actually. So you have like different steps that can be, and state that can be like executed over the time. To come to like a working and expected state at the end, and that's quite interesting the way that it works, and it relies on those external APIs, on the Rust, and also on different external binaries, and maybe something also to consider, because I'm pretty sure that we have the question at the end, but it's why did we like choose? Why did we decide to use Rust over Go? So first, we are using Go as well, not on the engine, but on the engine. If I go back here, the part that is in charge of forwarding the logs, so application logs, infrastructure logs, to the control plane in real time based on the request of the user, is creating in Go. And this part is talking to different agents. It could be like services provided by AWS, but also there's like some services that we are installing on Kubernetes, like Loki, to aggregate the logs. So that's the part that is written in Go, and we have also other parts. But for the engine, it's quite important for us that each time that we deploy the engine and we run any task on the engine, is that we are 100% sure that is gonna work. And that's due by I don't know if you're familiar with Rust, but the time system of Rust is guarantee and prevents any like runtime error, because you can be sure that with the borrower checker and the way that the compiler is working, you can be sure that when you release something in production and you deploy it and you make it run, then it will run. At least it will run and no crash. It doesn't mean that it will run the way that you expect, obviously, but it will run and no crash. And that's super, 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 super important for us. That's why we decided to make it in Rust. Yeah. Maybe to get into the details of, so I have like just a couple of other slides, but we are almost done. Just to get into the details and the code of the transactional model. It's quite interesting the way that it's just a trait. It's a system interface system that you have into the language that we implement. So let's say that when we implement a Kubernetes, so we want to manage a Kubernetes or any service on Covery, you have to implement a new interfaces. So you have your concrete object. So here it's AWS, probably it's a Kubernetes on AWS, so it's EKS, and you have to implement those interfaces. So here it's just the EKS, so the Kubernetes interface, and we force the developers, so our developer, to implement the different method, different functions. And here what you see is that we are forced to integrate, to implement the deploy environment a function, and also the deploy environment hero function. And what's interesting is that if you look at the results, so if you look at the return, the object that we return, it's a result with two values. It's the OK values, so it's the good values, so if everything goes in the right direction, and you have like an error values. And what happens here is that if anything fails, so if something fails into that function, at any stage, because behind the scenes, like another function that is a call, then will automatically, so it's the transaction engine that is created, will automatically call the deploy environment, so the equivalent with the underscore error function. And we have all those functions, so we have like tons of functions like this in the system, in the engine of Covery. And that's what makes like super explicit all the errors that we have to handle at any time. Obviously, we can like skip that and make like a panic, what we call a panic, and then skip those functions, but it's not the case because we just want to have like the system that is working the right way. Yeah, that's basically what. So yeah, I invite you just to take a look at that code, because it's quite interesting the way that it was done. And yes, after that, when we have like just at the end, so everything goes in the right direction, we have deployed the application, then the developer is able just to take a look at the interface and see that his application is running. That's quite, that's quite easy to understand. And that's also what is quite frustrating for us, because, you know, when you're a developer, you just want to have like your application that is running. Sometimes you just don't really care about how the things works behind the scene. And I can understand that. That's why we do exist. But yeah, it's like a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And the way that we try just to make the thing is not by abstracting all those things. That's why I'm making this live session. It's just to explain how the things behind the scene work, because I believe that you really need to understand how the things work, even if you don't want to be an expert. But you, as a developer, you need to understand at least how the things work behind the scene. And we really work on that, and we really try to make just easy and transparent as much as possible, without the hassle of all the complexity that you can get on AWS, for instance. Yeah. Just a quick note, because we are talking about like one developers, one application, and all those things, but imagine that because Covery is used by more than 10,000 developers around the world, we have customers from insurtech, fintech, healthcare, and a different type of SaaS, even ATS. We have like different kinds of customers. And it's, when you look at that, imagine that it's like thousands of development per day, and it's R&D teams that are working and relying on that product. So that's make like a very, it's super interesting in terms of engineering, obviously, but it's also super complex at the end. It's super complex because your system must be like super reliable, and that's why we decided to choose Rust, for instance. But yeah, that's something that you really need to consider when you look at Covery. Yeah, the infrastructure is managed because all around the world on their own cloud accounts. So Covery is not like a hosting platform. We are really like deploying this agent and this engine on their infrastructure, and all of that is working on the infrastructure, meaning that if they want to get rid of Covery and they no longer want to use it, they can even use the platform by themselves. Obviously, they even have like the configuration files that we are generating via Terraform and Helm, and they are stored on their side. So all of that is possible, but it's also a lot of complexity for us because we are managing that at large scale. And in these situations, you can imagine, I told you that it's super important just to have like a system that is super reliable. So we have created like thousands of tests, and that's what makes the things quite appealing and easy to use for anyone. Yeah. And something that is, and that's why I've changed the color, it's even if we are talking of all those details, it's what makes like super interesting and not so easy. It's the developer experience. The developer experience in all of that is super important, because you can be like the best product ever that is working 100% reliable, but if the developer experience is not there, then you can be sure that as a developer, if your target is developers, they will never probably use your platform. So it's today building like a developer product is not only just a functional product, but it's also something with a very good and tough experience. Yeah. So Yeah, so this is the last point that I wanted to cover. It's concerning how to build on top of Covery. If you are interested, we have like different interfaces. We have the CLI, the web interface, obviously. We have also like a REST API that we are consuming ourselves, where we provide like an open API documentation and specifications that you can use to generate your own client. And we are also using a Terraform. We are providing a Terraform provider to create your infrastructure, deploying your application, and creating multiple environments from production, staging, and also development environments. So all of that. Yes, I think I don't need to get into all those details, but yes, Covery simplified the AWS experience. You have to understand that Covery is composed into three parts. So the control plane, the Covery engine, the Covery agents that is running on the side of our customers. We have built this transactional model, so transactional engine into the Covery engine that you can take a look. It's completely open source and happy to have your contribution. And we really strive for simplicity. It's developer experience, so it's the key. So yes, that's it for today. And thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. That was awesome. Like I say, like I think as somebody who likes to build like web applications, but I don't like to know. I don't like to be involved in the infrastructure. So this is like infrastructure stuff confuses me. And when I get involved in infrastructure, particularly when I get into AWS and like, I have to search among their thousands of different services to try and figure out what it is I'm supposed to use. And I mean, I was just at reInvent and it was interesting because I'm curious if this is something that using Covery would help solve. A lot of people I talk to on AWS, they don't even know, like they spin up stuff that sits there and they're getting charged for things that they don't even know what's running because somebody spun something up at some point that like as part of some deployment, and then now it's running and they can't figure out what's running and where the costs are coming from. So I'm assuming like because this is all kind of contained and handles all that deployment process for me, like will help me avoid that kind of issue.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's the idea of Covery, getting like one simple view, one view where you can manage all your infrastructure, all your application from one single place. That's basically what we provide because, at the end, it's quite confusing when you use AWS, but also other cloud provider. You have to get into all the different views just to manage and get and grasp, the complete view of what you're doing. And it's super easy just to forget that you were like using a service that you are built for, but you're no longer using. And that's basically what we provide, this view and the ability just to manage and better manage your cost over the end.
So Nick has a question. He says, since it's built in Rust, are there potential plans to leverage WebAssembly for certain scenarios, or is that not part of the plan?
Yeah, that could be a plan, but it really depends. I think it's something that I'm really interested in personally. But in terms of like business cases, we don't have like so much people like requesting for that. But definitely it's something that could be quite interesting, especially when you see how the containers are great, but how they are like also difficult in terms of security management. So I just hope that at some point there's like a viable things that we can embed like in terms of WebAssembly. There's like some initiatives, Crosslet. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's an initiative operated by Microsoft. So a team of an engineering team that is working on creating a kubelet. So it's a kubelet in Rust that is managing WebAssembly resource. There's like a lot of innovations, and I'm looking forward to just seeing what we can do from that.
And so I'm curious. Right now, you just deployed to AWS, but you said like these people, like it's your own infrastructure, right? So can you do other clouds outside of, like, if I'm on Azure or Google Cloud? Is that possible using the Covery engine to like deploy to those?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's it's aligned with our vision of the cloud, so the meta cloud, what we call. The fun story is that we own meta.cloud.
You do?
Yeah, we do, and we had like a proposal from the company that behind that. But
what company? I don't know what company you're talking about.
Yeah, that's super aligned with our vision of the cloud, which was, so the cloud was the abstraction of the data centers, and what we're building is basically the abstraction of the cloud. Oh, sorry, mice. This is the end of the day. I'm super sorry.
I know. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, sorry. It's
Don't worry. Just keep going. We don't mind that. We don't mind little kids screaming in the background. I've been there. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, concerning like different cloud provider, we do support Scaleway, which is like a European cloud provider, DigitalOcean. We plan to support Azure and also GCP for our customers. And the idea is just how can you like build the future of the next generation of application on top of all those great cloud providers. And that's what we are doing. Yeah.
You got a couple of comments here from Ryan, who said he used it to show off a proof of concept tool he developed for his team. And he said it was super quick to get running, and he's impressed with it. As well as Tony. And so, yeah, I mean, sounds like you already have some fans. That's good. So tell me, I'm curious, what is your background and what made you decide to create this? I'm always curious, like people who go off and build a company like this because they see an opportunity. Like where did that come from?
Yeah. That's a great question. Thanks for asking. And I'm an engineer myself. I used to work on financial infrastructure in productions for many years, for more than 10 years. And I met my co-founders at Uning, this a great company in the financial industry. I was in charge of managing infrastructure, mostly in the Asia, Europe, all those things. And at the end, we were like doing always the same things for all the best companies over the world. And at some point, we just decided, we say, hey, we have the choice. We can stick to like build work for those companies, like because all our former colleagues are now working at Datadog, for instance, or we can just solve that problems that any like company in the world would love to. They would love to hire us at some point, and we just can build this product and make sure that they get access to it in just a few seconds. So that's how we started to think about Covery. But to be honest, it's not our first company; it's our third company. And you have we also have this mindset of entrepreneurship, and that's something that you really need to have in the blood. And if some of you in the are interested into building something at some point, you really need to go for it. Don't hesitate. The only thing is that you really need to just know where are your strengths, because it requires like a lot of effort. To build something that is meaningful for customer users.
Yeah. And I will say, like most entrepreneurs I ever talked to, they usually haven't just started one company, or if they've only started one company, it ends up being the first of many. I've never met an entrepreneur that's like, yeah, I did one company and I'm done.
That's the story that you can hear from. And to be honest, I'm not like super politician, or I don't know. It's something that you can hear on a TV show or on anything, when you hear like to a successful entrepreneur is saying that, oh yeah, I was doing that, just it was the first try and then I succeed. And it's when you look and you look just behind the scenes, not really the case. It's not really the case.
Yeah, and even the ones who usually become successful, it's not always on your first try. Yeah, that's what he's saying. Yeah,
it's just like you need to enjoy the ride, and I'm doing that, and I really love. We are working with a customer all around the world, and when you start at 5 or 6 in the morning and you end at midnight, you really need to enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise, you're lost.
Yeah, no, totally. And So, and one last question from me. So what? How is it? You said that developer experience is kind of like critical to any product like this to be successful. And I completely agree, but I think curious in terms of what I guess the hard thing is like we say developer experience, and whoa, it's very.
Yeah,
What does that mean?
yeah, it's
I'm curious. What does this mean to you? Like, what is it that makes a great developer experience to you?
yeah, it's super. I think it's a very interesting question. It's a very good question because it doesn't mean anything. In fact, it's just for I can give my definition, but the definition of building something that building a product with a great developer experience is when you really you are building the product for your developers with your users. It's the point. And I'm spending from day one, I'm spending so much time with my users. We have like a great communities that I thanks a lot. We have like customer that we're spending like so much time with them just to make sure that the platform is exactly what they need. You know, it's not tailored for their individual needs, obviously, but it's tailored for the common the needs of the target that we have. And that's what I call just having like the best developer experience possible, because it responds to the needs, exactly the needs of your user, and you have to spend time with them. It's not like just saying, hey, I'm building a product with a great developer experience. Yeah, it can be like fancy, beautiful, everything. It's like it's great, but if it's not usable by your users, then it doesn't mean anything, or you have to change the users maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I always think, like, I think in my experience, where a lot of companies amidst this, and this is my perspective, is that the people who are building the product are not the people who use the product and haven't really haven't done like what you're doing, which is talk to developers who are actually using the product to understand how they're using it. So they're, oftentimes they're lost in the world of how the product is built, and they'll build the feature, and the feature works, but it's not usable. Like when somebody goes out there and tries, it's like, yeah, but that doesn't fit in my workflow. It's really counterintuitive or something, and it's often like a disconnect between the people writing versus the people using. And you have to have people like yourself who kind of bridge that gap between them and make sure they understand how developers actually use something, because it's often not what we expect when we initially create a product.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I'm learning like every day, every single day. It's exactly that. And you have to just reconnect your users and the developers and the product team, all those people. That's the most challenging things ever in a company like us. It's not like building a very technical product. We can build like anything, almost anything. There is no problem. It's just building something that is meaningful and usable by your user, because our team is quite experienced. And I remember one time I had one of my engineers saying, hey, I can't understand how people just can't use like the cloud. They can't, like, it's super easy to do that and that and that and that and that. It was like super easy for him. So what I decided is just to, hey, so you need to spend time with our users and customer. You have to come to the meetings and all the different events, because otherwise you would just like say always the same thing and assume that everyone is like as proficient as you are, and it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah. It's hard to put yourself in the shoes, particularly of some of the users who are less advanced than because we sometimes make assumptions about who the users are, and then suddenly you see that and like, oh, I thought they were really experienced and I knew the X or Y, and it turns out they don't. And a lot of developers, kind of hope that tools like this will answer that for them, and then the tool comes in assuming they already know the answers. So Joel has a question for you. How did you get introduced to Techstars? If you can answer that.
How did you get introduced to Techstars? By applying. Yeah, no, that's fun because I have like a textile party just after that event, and
Oh,
yeah, no, we just applied, but that's quite interesting question because the day that we applied was like the last day of applications, and we really decided to candidate for that for one single reason. It's because we are like quite experienced. If you look at our team and you get into the slash team, Qovery.com/team, you will see that we are all experienced with impressive backgrounds. Even my CTO has written like a book on MySQL performances, high performances. We are like super veteran of the infrastructure. There is no problem, but there's one thing that is missing. Um, to build like a successful company is the network, and the network, we didn't have like any network, and that's why we decided just to jump into textile, because the main value, it's like the Y Combinator is from what you get from them is the network, being able to be connected to anyone in San Francisco, anyone in New York, anyone in India, anywhere. It's like crazy value, crazy. It's something that is underrated when you build a company as a developer, as a tech guy. But trust me, it's what makes like today. We have great investors. We have a fundraise like 5 million in total. It's our last one. It's like a seed, and we have Docker, Datadog, Content Square, PeopleDog. Check out Twilio that have invested into our company, and just for one reason is because we are like super well connected. Obviously, we know what we're doing, but it's because we are well connected. And so if you want to end that thing, I think it's if you have like a good qualification in what you're doing, and you really want to get into textiles or even like Y Combinator, just try, and really ask you why you want to get into that, and then I'm pretty sure that you will succeed to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Like that network is super important. I'm not like I've only recently I've been doing this for a long time. I've only recently gotten to the startup world, and I've seen that the companies who succeed, it's a combination of like good
Yeah.
leadership, good product, and a product market
Yeah.
fit, obviously. But that
Yeah.
network, because so much of it, like you can have a great product, but if you don't have that network to build partnerships and get investors and things like that, your great product and nobody really gets to see it, and
Yeah.
you don't have the funding to keep it going, and it just kind of can die from there. So totally, that's really good advice. So there wasn't any other questions from the audience. So, and I know it's late on your end, and I really appreciate you coming out late in the evening when your family is there saying, "Where's Dad?"
Sorry about like
No,
that.
don't worry.
She's doing that every night. She's coming into the room.
I have like stuff to block out background noise for me, like this little program, so that because of dogs and kids, my kids are older, but they'll still come up.
Okay.
If you think it's going to end, just wait. I have a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old, and I'm on a meeting like this, and they'll wander up behind and just start talking. You're like, hello, do you not see? They're old enough, they should know, but they don't.
Okay, so it happens even when they are like older.
Yes, I hate to tell you. All right, Romaric, it was so great chatting with you, and thank you for the great presentation, and hopefully we'll have you back. Obviously, you all are moving very fast, so we'd love to hear more about this, maybe 6 months down the line when you get further along, and we can hear some of the great updates. So anyway, thank you so much for coming out, and thanks everybody for watching. Really appreciate it. We will be off for the second. We usually do the second and fourth Thursday. So obviously the fourth Thursday this month is going to hit the holidays. So we're not doing that. We will be back for the second Thursday in January. So look forward to the announcement for that. And obviously I'd love to see you all at the jam.dev. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So hopefully you'll join that. Bye, everybody.